Hello and welcome to this edition of Let's Talk About It. My guest today is Dr. Valina Haynes-Johnson. Thank you so much for being here, Valina.
Thank you, Ferrell, for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also Dr. Sandra Saunders. Dr. Saunders, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Our topic of discussion is the school system. We're trying to get to the root of a lot of things that are happening in the system. We see a lot of violence happening in the schools. We see a lot of teachers that are interacting inappropriately with students and these types of things. So we want to address some of those issues today, ladies.
Sounds fine.
Yes, yes. So let's start right off by this. Why, and I'm going to ask both of you guys this, why do you think it is that so much negativity is associated with the school system these days? From the teachers sleeping with students, from, just it's so many things that are happening in the school system. Why do you think the school system is failing right now? And Dr. Johnson, I'll ask you first.
Well, I think that a lot of pressure has been placed on the school system to play the parts of parents, and a lot of what the students are learning today, such as their social skills, have been placed on the shoulders of teachers. Many of the teachers are not well trained or do not have the diversity to be sensitive to the needs of those students.
Okay, okay. Dr. Saunders.
I totally agree. I think also that the expectations are much higher than we have ever had in the past. I think that this testing that's going on has placed undue stress on teachers, undue stress on the children. The parents want to see the school run many times as a business, and you cannot run schools as a business when you deal with children. The children that we have today are children that have unusual stress in their lives, I feel, from having things like Asperger's, autism, and they're in the classroom with mainstream children. In the past, they were placed in groups and taught that way, and now everyone would like to see even Down syndrome children placed in an average classroom, which means that the classroom is not average anymore. So
Wow.
we have many struggles that we have to face and find new solutions for.
Okay, okay. So when you see these types of things happening in the school system, I know personally for me, I always wonder what the foundation of it is.
Yes.
Did it start at home? Was it the way the children were reared? Is it technology and things that they see on a day-to-day basis that affect their lives and cause them to act or react to certain things a certain way? From video games to their home environment. You know, so how do you guys think technology has played a role in the behavior of kids today?
I think that we don't have the interaction that we used to have, where we went outside and played with someone. We got to know them in many different settings, and we were able to work together. Now, many children are not even allowed to go outside and play. They're in apartments where there's gang violence or whatever, and we are not able to allow them the flexibility that we once had. Technology is a wonderful thing. I never want to minimize that. I think that we are in a technological age, and we must show children how to learn through technology. I know that not only do they play games, but they need to know how to make their own games, and that's what we're not doing with our children. We're just showing them a way to play, but they need to know a way to learn too. And there are many technology apps that can help them do that.
Okay.
I'd like to segue from what she's talking about. We find that a lot of the parents are using technology as babysitters.
I was thinking that.
And as she was saying, social skills are developed with children with playground play.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of the parents as well are not able to monitor what their children are watching.
Right.
And children are getting messages from other children. And as she said, technology would be a wonderful aid in teaching. Whereas you and I had a book, there's so much more available to the children.
Right.
But I think that it starts at the home, and that a lot of the parents are ignorant as to what the technology could actually be a great benefit. But yet I find that in other homes, other ethnicities are very aware of the benefits of technology.
Okay.
And so they are targeting that. When we look at most of our schools now, not only are we having a mix of students in the classroom, our legislators thought that was a great idea to mainstream students so that education would become more equitable for everyone.
Is that from a multicultural perspective?
It was not done as a multicultural perspective. It was done as what they felt was exposure to the same type of learning.
Okay.
But as she was mentioning to you, in a regular classroom, it's a great disadvantage both to the regular child as well to the student that has special needs to be immersed together.
Okay.
Because
okay.
then either one is not getting targeted instruction.
Okay.
And so then we go into differentiated instruction, and oftentimes we have educators that are not able to pass on that message
Okay.
efficiently.
So tell me this, how do you feel like the educators can have more of an influence or more of a positive impact on the kids? How can you guys as educators have more of a positive impact on the kids?
I think that we come with a positive impact. I think that the bottom line is that we're not educating the whole child. I was going to say when you were growing up, but when we were
Yes,
growing
exactly.
up, we were educating the whole child. Now we've gotten to where we're back to our basics, our ABCs, arithmetic,
Okay.
and math, and science. I mean, we just don't have the excitement in science that we as a nation needs to see happen, because then through science, then your math is going to be addressed.
Okay.
And then your reading and your writing is going to come along with that.
So it all coincides, in other words.
Yes, it does. And integrated instruction is definitely where we're headed toward. I think, though, here in the United States especially, that our educational system moves very, very slow. And we are just learning in the education system that not only is education something that needs to be looked at as a business, because we do have dollars and cents that play a great factor into how successful we are.
Okay.
And such as what's been happening in the Texas legislature as of late. They've been cutting our educational budget.
And that's such a tragedy. That is
Yes.
such a tragedy.
Yes.
Because I feel like, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I feel like if you're cutting the education, number one, you eventually will have a big problem in society from that generation of kids that the educational resources are being cut from. So I don't think that they're looking at the big picture often. I think they're looking at the small picture, and it's so unfortunate because the kids are the ones that will eventually suffer. But when the kids suffer, we suffer.
That's exactly right.
You know,
That's
and
right.
I used to hear the saying, I believe that, the children are our future.
Yes.
And as a younger person during that time in my life, I didn't understand that. But as I've become a mature adult, I can understand what was meant by that. When, because they will eventually take care of us.
That's exactly
They are the one, that's the hope.
Hopefully.
That's the hope. They will either take care of us or they won't take care of us.
That's right.
But it's what we're instilling in them today that's going to make the difference. So it's going to be important that we start, I don't know, fighting more for the kids. I don't know. I am not an educator. You guys are amazing educators. I read your bios, so I know quite a bit about you. But how do we make that difference? We got to make a difference. And another thing that bothers me, and tell me what you guys think, is I've noticed that prayer is no longer in a lot of the schools. Do you think that would make a difference? Prayer?
I think, excuse me, won't you? I think it definitely would make a difference. I think that just going to church and understanding the values that we've had in the past and how that affects our future helps children understand what they need to do also.
Okay.
I want to backtrack just a little bit because I think that you are exactly right. Children are our future. And when we look at our environment right now, we look at global warming, we look at all of the, the solar energy that we need. We have to have those children develop that for us. We don't have that right now. If they don't have the funds in order to learn how to do different things, then it's not only them that are going to struggle. We're not going to have a future. So when we say children are our future, we have all of these different environmental things that are happening to us right now. And if we do not help those children and help people understand that we need more, we need more of them, then we will not survive.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can't wait till we continue this conversation in just a moment when we come back with more of Let's Talk About It so that we can continue the dialogue on a very serious subject. Hello and welcome back to Let's Talk About It with my panelists today, Dr. Verlena Haynes-Johnson and Dr. Sandra Saunders. Thanks so much for joining me. We were talking about prayer in schools when we left out. I think that it's important to have prayer in schools. I know when I was growing up, we had prayer in schools, and I think that it actually made a difference because the things that we saw then we don't see now, and we know that prayer has been removed. I was asking you guys before we went to a break, what do you feel about that? You were expressing yourself. Dr. Johnson, tell me a little bit about how you feel about prayer in school.
I know that in many school districts, after the pledge, there's a moment of silence, and to do it as they see fit. Now, you're asking elementary kids to do it as they see fit. If
Okay.
they have no idea what you're even talking about a moment of silence, then they don't know what to do in order to see fit. Um, I think that we've gotten some confusion with religious principles and
Okay.
spiritual principles. And I know for many of the school districts now, they have character education. And character education is designed to teach the principles of life, such as honesty, such as integrity. And yet, as I said, that's being saddled on the shoulders of teachers that already have responsibilities as to how much they're going to teach in a day. And then we have all of these outside influences that affect spiritual principles that are not being addressed.
Okay.
We have parents that are coming in a long time ago when the teacher said this is what little Johnny did, the mother addressed that. Now we
Right.
have parents that when we say this is what little Johnny did, they say no, not my child. And yet they live with them every day.
Oh.
And so we do know that they know that little Johnny did that and some more.
Okay.
And so oftentimes teachers are having to help parents with parenting skills. And yet we're not adept at that as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of chaos going on.
A
in
lot
the
of
school
chaos.
system.
So I guess when you say that teachers have to help parents with parenting skills, I wonder why don't the parents already have parenting skills? Is it because their parents raised them a particular way, or that they may have come from a single parent family? What might be some of the things that would cause a parent not to know how to parent?
Well, I know that when I was growing up, our parents did not reward bad behavior. It was expected of us to go into the school systems and to behave well and be there to learn. This past Christmas, I had some of my students even walk in and say, you know, as bad as I've been, my mother gave me a PS3 and this. And when children
Really?
can recognize that what parents should do, they're not doing, and they know that they're getting mixed messages because in the school system, we're not going to reward bad behavior.
Right.
We expect them to understand that there's learning that needs to be had as well as teaching that needs to be delivered. We expect them to come in knowing that, but they're not coming in knowing that.
Right. Right. And that's one of the things we automatically would expect. Dr. Saunders, how do you feel about corporal punishment in the schools? Do you think because
No.
that's
I don't feel that corporal punishment is the answer. Many times children are punished at home severely, so much so that we've had to intervene. I think that many of the parents don't understand parenting skills because they're young too. We have 14 and 15-year-olds having children. So by the time they get to the educational system, they are trying to learn and they're treating their children differently. They
Okay.
want to say, many of the young parents will say, well, I just want to have some time on my own. I just want to be able to do some things that I wasn't able to do
Okay.
because I had a child. And the grandparents are stuck with either watching the children, or many of the grandparents now are in their 30s and 40s, which means that they still are young too.
Right.
So when you have that kind of society, then you're having difficulty with the children, you're having difficulty with the parents, and the school
Wow.
system is trying to take over for them and meet their needs, and we just cannot meet everyone's needs
Right.
all the time. So it's a difficult situation, but I think that many of the schools now, in our school district, we have times where if a parent has a problem, they can call the teacher 24/7. They've given them cell phones to work with them. They have after-school programs now for the children. We are now also providing breakfast and lunch for the children. So the school
wow.
system is trying to do things, but again, we have the physical fitness programs that we're trying to have. We're trying to do character education, and teachers are just saying, we want to do all of those things, but when do we have time to teach?
Okay,
So
okay.
it's
One of the things that I heard recently that really disturbed me from an educator like yourselves was that she called a parent
Yes.
to say that your child is misbehaving in my classroom and gave the list of all the behaviors that were taking place with that child. And the parent's response was, between the hours of 8 and 3, he's your responsibility.
Yes.
When he comes home, he's mine. I was really taken aback by that, because how can you expect a teacher to raise your child? It didn't make any sense to me. And what was even more shocking was that this was something that was heard repetitively. It wasn't the first time that that had taken place. And I was like, are you serious? And I'll just speak for myself. As a young child growing up, when we were in trouble or we had done something that was inappropriate at school, and we knew that we were going to get a note that we had to take home and get signed, that was some of the scariest times for me.
Exactly.
Because I knew about the consequences, because I knew that my mother and my father would whip my butt.
Yes.
Let's just keep it real.
Yes.
And these days, so many kids aren't getting their butts whooped. And as a result of it, I think we get some bad kids in society because they're not getting their butts whooped at home. And then you have these laws about child abuse, and so the kids have a level of knowledge about child abuse or whatever it is, so they'll use that as a tool against their parents. If you whoop me and if I did it, then I'm gonna. And for me, if that was my child that approached me that way, then guess what? I'm gonna beat your butt some more just because you had the nerve and audacity to come at me twisted like that.
Right.
So I think that oftentimes we don't, or we're fearful. And I think we should never be fearful of our children. If
Right.
anything, the children should be fearful of us.
Well, there was once a time when we had parents that understood parent involvement. That's the new catchword.
Parent involvement.
Parent involvement.
Okay.
And as you said, there was once a time the parent was so involved we didn't have to address parent involvement.
Okay.
Now
okay.
we have to address it in the school system, which is a way to include the parent and to get them as a positive support. As you were saying, what happened with your instance was actually a negative support. You send the children to us. Yes, they're our responsibility, but our responsibility is to do what? It's to teach them. It's to keep them safe.
Right.
It's not to teach them how to be children that live in a family away from us.
Right.
If we had them 24/7, we'd see a different child.
Right.
But that's not what we have. And so the children are getting mixed messages. In school, it's structured, and then they go home to many times dysfunctionalism. That's really deep in the home.
Yeah. And that's so unfortunate, because a lot of times those kids can't help that.
Exactly.
And I oftentimes say this: adults fail children. Children don't fail children,
That's
but
right.
adults fail children. And so it's important that we just kind of, I know as educators, because I know you guys the way that I do, I know you guys are doing the optimum to try to make a difference in the
right.
kids that you guys are privy to be in contact with.
Yes.
We're going to continue to talk about this dialogue a little bit further in the next segment. All right, thanks so much for joining me on this segment. We'll be right back in just a moment with more. Welcome back to more of Let's Talk About It with my wonderful guests, Dr. Valina Haynes Johnson and Dr. Sandra Saunders. Welcome back, ladies.
Hey, how you doing, Ferrell?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. As you already know. We're having such wonderful dialogue here about education and the educational system with these two doctors of education. That's really shining a bright light on things that we're talking about. And I appreciate that. And I hope that my viewers will appreciate it as well. Another topic that I wanted to discuss was bullying in schools. We have so much bullying in schools. I know for myself, as a kid growing up, I was always bullied and picked on and talked about. I was smaller and that type of thing. And it really affected me throughout life. And even as an adult, I still have moments where I feel this inferiority complex because of how I was treated as a kid, being bullied. How would you guys address, Dr. Saunders, how would you address bullying in schools?
In a variety of ways. Depends on what grade level. because younger children, we see that time and time again. And many of our schools now have a no tolerance policy. When we see bullying, we address it immediately. We talk to the parents about it too. And many times the parents don't even understand that what they're doing is bullying,
Okay.
or what the child is doing is bullying. They just say, oh, that's just children being children. And now we have had to have training sessions with parents to help them understand what bullying is. And we've had many sessions with students to talk about that too. In the upper grades also, we have a
Okay.
different type, because sometimes it's peer pressure more
Yeah.
than just one-on-one with students.
Okay.
And so we've had to address that in terms of what we do and how we stop that peer pressure from happening. And also we've had to have police sometimes come in and
Wow.
talk with students about it.
Is
So
that
this is
okay?
very serious.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Oftentimes I'll see a lot of violence in school. I'm sure bullying plays a part in it. But even now we're seeing so many shootings and killings that are taking place in the schools.
Yes.
With these kids bringing guns onto the campuses and killing other kids.
Yes.
How do we address that?
Well, with bullying, especially the age group that we've seen, that's coming through cyberbullying. Whereas you may have been bullied, and maybe it was just between one or two children, and maybe just a few hurt. Now with cyberbullying, whatever is being said or displayed is exponentially sent out to so many children at one time.
Wow.
And putting that fire out
Wow.
is really a task that we as educators haven't figured out. How do you handle that?
So cyberbullying, is that prevalent today?
Very
Cyber-
prevalent, very prevalent. And as she was saying with the younger children, now we are finding even down into the elementary, because they're all on the internet.
Yes.
They're all on the internet. Everybody's got a Facebook account.
Okay.
And so, it's not just the upper grade levels. And when you get especially to middle school, where the children are in the identification stage, that's what I
Okay.
call it. They're trying to figure out who am I and what am I going to become. Then something that is said negatively about them can have such an impact on them. And as you said, it follows us through life.
Yeah.
And these are all things that as educators we're becoming privy to now. When we first went through our master's program, probably Dr. Saunders as well, we learned early childhood behavior.
Yes.
And that's what we focused on. And now there's just so much more to a child that now with research that we're finding out. And now we're trying to address it. But as I said earlier, education moves very slowly with adjusting to the trends of the world.
Okay. Okay. Now tell me this: why is it that in other countries, like China, education seems to be like through the roof? Why is it that America and the U.S. have kind of fallen a little bit when it comes to education?
Well, many reasons. Other countries have just one group to deal with, so their culture tends to be the same. We have a multicultural society, which means that every country coming in has their own norm, and
Okay.
sometimes that norm is not the same. Where it's a very calm society.
Okay.
One school where I'm teaching right now, we have 14 different languages, which means that we have many cultures in there. And so interacting with those cultures, teachers first had to learn about those cultures, where you're not supposed to show the soles of your feet, or you're not supposed to rub
Oh,
a
wow.
child's head.
That's right.
Well, if you don't know that, and a child from another country says, oh, this is my buddy, I'm going to grab onto him, give him a little kiss, because that's what we do in our country, and the other child says, I'm going to hit you. You don't kiss me, I'm a boy and you're a boy. And it had nothing
Wow.
to do with anything other than cultural differences.
Wow.
So you really have to understand that America is different than many of the other countries. You say, oh, you know what? Well, we're number 14 now in terms of science, in terms
Okay.
of things that other cultures are doing. But many of those cultures take the cream of the crop, and those are the students that move on to colleges. We're fortunate in the United States to say, you know what, anybody's welcome to an education. We're going to teach everyone. And so with that comes some responsibilities. With that comes some heartaches too.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Wow. Wow.
And then our educational levels are so different. When you were mentioning other countries and how long, when I went to school, we had, I'm sure, over 190 days of school
Okay.
throughout the year. It's getting shorter and shorter, not just in the number of days, but also in the number of hours that are focused on instruction. And that's hurting us deeply. I think that for science and for math, extending the learning day for 2 hours would not hurt us one bit.
Is that right?
In fact, it would enhance the child. We have many of the children that don't want to leave us at the end of the day. When
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
When she was talking about breakfast and lunch, for many of our students, that's when they eat, when they're with us, and that's with us urging them on to eat. So we have many situations and problems that are part of our educational system here in the United States.
Okay.
And I think though that as time goes on, and of course definitely we are reaping what
Yes.
we have sown,
Yes.
with instances like Connecticut,
Mhm.
and there's so many others now that we are adjusting as quickly as we possibly can in the educational system with addressing those needs.
Right. I think that's very important, and I also think it's important that we stay cognizant and stay educated about it all.
Yes.
You know, you were talking a minute ago about the cultural barriers and cultural differences. It's so important that we're all educated about that.
Exactly.
Because when we're educated about it, we can behave or we can operate differently when we see it.
Exactly.
You know, I think that's very important. We're going to talk a little bit more about everything we're talking about in just a minute when we come back with more of Let's Talk About It. Hello and welcome back to Let's Talk About It. We're having some very stimulating dialogue on today's show with Dr. Valina Haynes Johnson and Dr. Sandra Saunders. We're talking about so many things that affect the schools and the school system in general. What I want to talk about and address a little bit with you ladies is homeschooling. What do you guys feel about homeschooling? Is it beneficial to the kids or is it beneficial to the community at large? What do you feel about that, Dr. Saunders?
I think that we have a variety of types of education from charter school to homeschool, and we're going to have to allow that to happen. Basically, I would like all children to be in public school, but that's not a reality. So we have to look now at technology once again so that children being homeschooled get the same standards that children in public schools get,
Okay.
in state schools and charter schools and all of the above. My fear is that sometimes parents are not well educated, and so they want their children to be at home with them, and they don't know the avenues to go to make sure that their children get the best education possible.
Okay.
We do find that some children that are schooled are still able to go to colleges, but we do find that there are children that are not ready and have to retake tests, and so that is the difficulty.
Okay. Dr. Johnson, homeschool versus private school.
Homeschool, one of the deficiencies that we found is that the children are not exposed to social skills that they would develop if they were in a public setting. Private schools here in the United States have usually been reserved for those that can afford them, because we don't have public funds that support those types of schools. And we often find that children that in a public school setting would have their learning disabilities addressed, then those parents that are able to, they sink them into the private school system because they're with money,
Okay.
money talks, and quite often then that child is, pushed along throughout that system. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best system for them.
And so often I've thought to myself, and I don't know everything about the private school, but oftentimes I've thought if you're in a private school, you're privy to a better education or a higher level of education because you're in a private setting. That's what I've oftentimes thought. But then again, I'm not an educator. You guys are. we're having such good dialogue. I want to take a moment to get a couple of questions from our studio audience. We're going to start with Mr. Galen Fly. Galen, you had a question for the panel.
Firstly, it is a question, but most importantly, I wanted to just give my debt of thanks to you educators. I think many times we don't give you enough gratitude for what you do. I have a young daughter, and it's always paramount when she comes home with a smile on her face. And just to know that there are some people out there that have the heart and the desire to want to teach makes a whole plethora of genius for me. So thank you so much for that. And my question is in regards to No Child Left Behind. Can you ladies speak to that?
Well, No Child Left Behind, that act was actually passed in an effort to mainstream students so that you wouldn't have children that previously had been placed in special education situations, that even if they had learning disabilities, that we still recognize that there were some courses that those type of children could be mainstreamed into and be successful. And so then you got the coined term "No Child Left Behind." But what happened was No Child Left Behind was indeed a good effort, but there were no funds put behind the effort. Whenever you come up with these innovative programs that was addressed during the Bush administration, you must fund that, and this is what's happening now in the state of Texas.
Okay.
With the STAR test and also the C-scope curriculum. It's a very viable curriculum, and it has been proven that this type of curriculum would work. But it would work with children that are already at a certain level. And so then we have teachers that are trying to figure out, how do I reach down to these children that are not at that level, teach at this curriculum that I'm being forced to teach at, and then pass the test.
Okay. Thanks for that very informative answer, Dr. Johnson. We have another question from our studio audience with Mr. Sam. Sam, what's your question there?
My question is, well, first of all, I want to say, ladies, welcome. It's really great to have you guys just around. Teachers are needed, and educators. Drugs, I want to kind of be, I guess, we have illegal and legal drugs. I have noticed, graduating back in I guess 1978, I'm not trying to tell my age, but and up to this time, that drugs in the school then and now, it's a little different. And meaning that for prescription and also recreational or illegal drugs, my question is what is the system, the school system, doing as of now in order to rectify the problem on both sides?
We have many students in the schools that have prescribed drugs, and it's a very difficult decision to make on the parents' part many times. We have counseling for the parents as well as for the children. What we're seeing, though, is that sometimes children are over-medicated and sometimes they're under-medicated, and that causes a problem for the classroom teacher. So she once again documents, first of all, every single thing that child does to help that child and to help the parent. Sometimes the parent sees that as helpful, and sometimes they don't see it as helpful, and they're angry about it. But what we see then is a trend each year, more and more students acting in unsuccessful ways. So the child then becomes very difficult in terms of harming himself, harming other students. We know that we have seen a rise of children hurting other children.
Yeah, a lot of violence.
A lot of violence going on. We don't know that that child didn't have, some kinds of medication that he decided not to be on, that the parents decided, oh, I'm not going to because it makes my child a little bit sleepy. So we have that violence going on. We have children in the classroom, for instance, with autism, Asperger's, Down syndrome, many trying to maintain in a classroom full of children that are either gifted and talented, regular ed, bilingual, and that mix sometimes causes difficulties too.
I can only imagine that, because a lot of times that particular child may feel like they have an inadequacy.
Yes.
Or that they're not as smart or as sharp and as a result of you feeling that way about yourself, your esteem is affected.
Exactly.
And oftentimes when your self-esteem is affected, we act out and do different things that show
Yes.
that our self-esteem is affected.
Yes.
There's so many variables when we talk about the education system, ladies. It's mind-boggling. I had no idea this dialogue would go in this direction. There's so many more questions that I personally have that I want to talk about. But one of the things that I also see in the school system is it seems a trend that's happening right now with these teachers having sexual relationships with, and I just have to touch on it, I'm sorry, with students as well. What in the world is going on? And we got to make this one quick because we only have a couple of minutes left,
Okay.
but I just had to address that. Dr. Johnson?
Well, it's not something can be addressed in a couple minutes, because a long time ago it used to be male teachers with female students.
Mhm.
Now we're finding that it's female teachers with young male students. There are laws that at least are in place for teachers having inappropriate behavior with a child. As a principal, I often told my teachers, never be in the classroom one-on-one with a member of the opposite sex.
Okay.
Because not only are we having teachers that are stepping out of bounds with relating to children, I think that basically because we're trying to find relationships with children and being straddled with that fact,
Right.
that we're the ones that set up a relationship with a child, then of course in any society you're going to have a few people that have a twisted mind,
Right.
and then they're going to take advantage of the opportunity of hurting children.
Wow, that is so unfortunate. I mean, this dialogue could go on for hours and hours and hours. Unfortunately, we only have a few minutes left in this segment, but we'll be back in just a moment with a little bit more before we have to leave you guys. Thanks so much. Hello and welcome back to Let's Talk About It with my wonderful guests today, Dr. Valina Haynes Johnson and Dr. Sandra Saunders. We're about to conclude this wonderful dialogue about the education system. I wanted to highlight my guest a little bit further and tell you a little bit more about what they're doing right now. Dr. Johnson, tell us a little bit more about what's happening in your future.
Oh, my future. Well, my forte is foreign language, and as we've talked about through this segment, we have so many different cultures that are coming into the educational system. My book is about an examination of foreign language teachers' perceptions of teaching foreign language. But I think that we're finding out that even with basic English, for some of us, that is indeed a foreign language.
Oh, now I wasn't expecting you to say that, Dr. Johnson.
Well, it is what it is.
It is. I say it often. It is what it is. And I have a good friend who actually says that a lot too, now by the name of Elizabeth Jackson. She oftentimes says it is what it is, and she is so right. Dr. Saunders, now I'm actually holding up your latest project.
Yes, it is.
This wonderful book here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about that.
It's a project-based learning book for students, and it helps them with science. We're now in an age where every child has to have differentiated instruction. They need to be able to work in a digital society, and this book offers them a way to do that. The book is also in ebook form too. So they look at careers in science. They also look at individual projects that they would be interested in, and they try to do it in a thematic approach. So they're doing things with art, with science, with reading, and so I'm very pleased to know that Sylvia Hill and I authored this book
Yes,
together.
and you actually co-authored the book. I
Yes.
totally forgot. That's right. That's
Yes.
right. All right. So this was a collaborative project that Dr. Saunders did, and it's an educational project as well. I certainly commend you for creating this wonderful
Thank
book
you.
here, and I wish you very much success.
Thank you.
I know you have a lot of good things coming your way in the very near future, so keep on doing that thing. And Dr. Johnson, the same for you. We're looking forward to your project coming out, and we'd like to have you back on the show once that happens.
Anytime.
Anytime. All right. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of Let's Talk About It with my wonderful guests, Dr. Valina Haynes Johnson and Dr. Sandra Saunders. Until next time.